There is no doubt, as you've been saying over and over, Don, what Trump was saying here, and it clearly related to violence against Hillary.
Dan, you're disagreeing with Jeffrey?
I mean, Don, I'm trying not to break down in laughter. This conversation's almost broken into the comical realm. It's clear what he was suggesting. I mean, he clearly, from what I had to read through his exact comments in the Washington Post today twice when I was asked to be on the show to try to find out what exactly the controversy was even about.
Okay, let's play it again. Stand by, Dan. Let's play it just in case you're not you're confused. Let's play it again.
No, I'm not confused, though.
Okay, let's play it.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. But
okay, explain to us, people who don't understand and that you want to laugh at, what he meant by that.
Don, the man, I think we all know, is running for president of the United States. He probably has some data that one-issue voters, a lot of one-issue voters vote on the Second Amendment issue. It's clear he's trying to motivate people to go out and vote based on the potential for an open Supreme Court seat. How that's clear to you, that was some kind of call to an open revolution and to start firing your weapons at public officials, is utter absurdity.
No one said that, Dan. No one said that. No one said that. And so, no one said that. If he wanted people to go out and vote, why not just say, go out and vote, the Supreme Court depends on it.
Listen,
the Second Amendment depends on it. Why say something like that if that's not what he meant? As someone who's running for leader of the free world, shouldn't he be as clear in his words as possible? Go ahead.
Don, do you want me to? I'll answer that question. Listen, we can disagree about how imprudent he worded that, but to suggest that he was calling to violence means to me that you came into this with the idea that Donald Trump was calling to violence. Let me make the case afterwards. You didn't come into this with a clear and open mind. Listen, I endorsed Cruz in the primary campaign. I'm not a Trump surrogate. I'm supporting him now.
Dan, what you're saying right now makes no sense. I'm sitting at home. I'm watching Donald Trump. I have 2 ears. I have 2 ears and I have 2 eyes, and I can see the reaction of the people behind me. And we're not stupid. Every single person you have on this panel, who are very smart people, David Gergen, who's respected. Hang on, will you let me finish, Dan? David Gergen, who's respected by people on both sides, by Republicans and by Democrats, who've worked for Republicans and Democrats, who has worked for a president who's had an assassination attempt, who's lived through presidents who've been assassinated, knew exactly what Donald Trump is saying, and we're supposed to be stupid enough not to understand that and to believe the spin coming from the surrogates and for people like you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
It doesn't make it, Don, frankly, I'm ashamed that you're talking to me as if I'm a child when 12 years of my life.
No, you're treating me as a child because you're telling me what I'm supposed to hear. And you're sitting here on television lying to the American people.
You don't know crap about this, Don. You're a TV guy. I was a Secret Service agent. Now cut off my mic. Do what you want.
I'm not going to cut off your mic. I'm going to tell you that you're sitting here and you're lying to the American people. You're lying to the American people, and you know that you're lying to the American people.
I'm lying. Dan Roger. Right. I read these comments. A couple of people read them.
Don, can we
nonsense?
Can we go back to Jeffrey Toobin, please, Don, and his point about that ordinarily in this situation, a Secret Service agent would visit the campaign and talk to the candidate and warn him about the rhetoric like this. Jeffrey, can you jump in here and help us understand that and let Don respond to that question of practices?
Obviously, Dan worked for the Secret Service, and I respect that. I worked with the Secret Service when I was an assistant U.S. attorney, when I was an advanced person working for a presidential candidate in 1980. I mean, I certainly have less experience than Dan did, but I know how seriously the FBI, the Secret Service takes these issues, and they don't wait around to parse very carefully. Is it a threat? Is it not a threat? What does it really mean? They are aggressive about these issues, and they reach out, and they don't arrest people necessarily. And there is no grounds, and let me be clear about this, there are no grounds to arrest Donald Trump for what he said. But it is close enough to the edge of a threat. And Dan, I just think you're way off base about this. I think any serious person who listens to this recognizes that this is close to a threat, and it's the kind of thing where the Secret Service says, "Hey, pal, take it easy."
It's one of those things where everybody else is crazy, but the person who is wrong. But Dan, you're running for office in Florida. You're running for Congress.
Yes.
So do you support this kind of language, this kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump as someone who's running for elected office?
Don, what kind of language? Trying to motivate Second Amendment
the question.
voters
Do you support what Donald Trump said
polls?
today?
That was an answer to the question. Support
yes or
what?
no?
Getting people out to vote for Donald Trump?
Do you support what he said today?
Don, people who believe the Second Amendment should absolutely vote against the gun grabber, Hillary Clinton, 100%. And whatever you need to say within the realm of reason to motivate people to get out and vote, yes, you should do that because you will lose your Second Amendment
First of all, that's a talking point to call someone a gun grabber. No one is trying to take your guns. Right. That is a talking point.
Don, you're Captain Talking Point. You're like Captain Talking Point, and then you throw it back at me. Your insults.
What's my talking point? Tell me what my talking point is, Dan.
You came into this and you said, listen, this is pretty clear. Donald Trump was implying some kind of a violent act against Mrs. Clinton, which I'm telling you from 12 years of experience doing that.
How is that a talking point? Do you know what a talking point is? A talking point is when you are a political operative and you go on television every single day and you say the same thing over and over and over, whether it's wrong or not, because you have been fed something by the campaign.
I've never said this over and over. You're actually the first person to ask me about it, so I've never said this over and over. That's not a talking point. You asked me a question, I gave you an answer. It's clear to me, and Jeffrey, again, I appreciate your comments, but I disagree with you completely on this. When you take the totality of circumstances, it was not a guy in a bar making these comments. It was a presidential candidate giving a speech where he was talking about the Second Amendment. This isn't even close to the Secret Service would laugh this off if you brought this in their office.
The Secret Service is not laughing it off, by the way, but go ahead, David Gergen.
Time magazine has a piece out tonight interviewing former Secret Service high up. He said, I would be in there in an instant, basically, to tell the campaign to cool it. That this is very close. This is very, well, it's just like you. It's someone who they went to interview, and he said, you know, this is very close to the edge. The very words Jeffrey Toobin used. And so I think you at least have to agree to the proposition that reasonable people can have a different interpretation of what he said, that it falls on different ears. You know, that's what a dog whistle is all about. Some people hear one thing, some people hear another. After you've gone out and called her crooked for all this time, basically called her a criminal, ought to be in jail. Your people are always yelling, lock her up. One of your people, you know, said she ought to be shot for treason, and you have
my people?
No, that's one of Trump's people. One of his top supporters says she ought to be shot for treason. When you have that kind of rhetoric of violence, wait a second. When you have a rhetoric of criminality and violence, and then Donald Trump drops these words into the middle of it, don't you think that some people could reasonably conclude from that, wait a minute, that really sounds like a sort of a subtle call to violence in the event that she wins.
No, because David,
don't you understand that some people?
By the way, Dan, there's a Secret Service official Twitter account that says the Secret Service is aware of the comments made earlier this afternoon, and as you said, laughing it off. They're not laughing it off.
They're not laughing. That's exactly right.
Don, I actually talk to Secret Service agents who work on the job still. I work there for 12 years.
Or have them call me, but
Believe me, they think this is ridiculous. No, I'm not. Wait, the point I was going to make is, David, I see what you're saying, but the same standard of reasonableness, as you're using that word, does not seem to apply when it's Democrats. Not to get off topic here, but when Barack Obama compared Republicans literally to Iranian hardliners and terrorists, I didn't see anyone saying, oh my God, we should go after Republicans because they're all terrorists, because Barack Obama said so. So my point in this is, if you come into this with a pre-existing narrative that Trump is calling for violence, you are naturally going to build the case ex post facto. And it doesn't work that way.
Your argument would make sense if it was just Democrats who were coming out saying he meant what he meant. But Jeffrey, I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Well, it's just, you know, this is a good example. It's good. It's on videotape, because everybody can see it for themselves, and everybody who understands the English language can make a judgment about what Donald Trump was talking about. And I think most reasonable people will listen to what he said and be very